Okay, we'll probably kick off. There will still be a few people joining, but just in the interests of time, because I know we are all very time poor, and this is such an important topic. So welcome everybody to this morning's webinar on managing mental health in the workplace, particularly in this year of 2021, which is different to many years previously. I'm your host today. I'm Sheri Hughes, the UK Diversity and Inclusion Director at PageGroup. I will introduce our presenters in just a moment. I suppose I just wanted to mention that, you know, this is such an important topic, and I think perhaps in the workplace especially, employers have perhaps not given it the airtime that it needs, and almost people are, you know, desperately trying to catch up now, because with the years we've had in 2020 and going into 2021, nobody is exempt from having ups and downs with their mental health. And I think we've all been tested to the absolute limit. So what we want to try and enable you today is to get some really good information around what is happening around our mental well-being and how you can support yourself and your employees within your organisation. So I have had the pleasure of working with these lovely ladies on a number of occasions. So I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Ngozi and Obehi Alofoje today. And I will take no more airtime because these ladies know way more about this topic than I do. So I will just come back at the end to do questions. Please do put your questions in the chat, and we'll make sure we've got time for those at the end that you can pose to the ladies. So Ngozi, Obehi, thanks so much for joining us. Over to you.
Thank you for that, Sheri. Hi everybody. Let's get straight to it. So we run a company called Aurora Wellness, and it's a bit of background about who we are. We're a mental health and well-being consultancy, and we deliver a range of personal development programs that are designed to help strengthen your employees' mental resilience and ultimately to improve workplace well-being and productivity. And we do this because we know that good mental health and well-being is just as fundamental to life and business as good physical health and safety. We believe that each individual has the right to a fulfilling career, personal life, and purpose, and that is the route to being well. How we do this is by running workshops, one-to-one, and group coaching programs in person and online, using our 3 pillars of well-being, the pause, think, act model in our programs. And we work with individuals as well as corporates. So we work with professionals and managers and entrepreneurs, as well as companies buying well-being programs on behalf of their employees. So that's a bit of background. The reason for all of it is to enable good mental health and well-being in the workplace for you and your people, because we know this is the fundamental essential requirement for a good functioning organization, is that everybody is well, both physically and mentally. So a little bit about me. My name's Ngozi, and I feel like I'm part of the Page family. My husband works for Michael Page and has done for the last, I don't know, about 13 years. Personally, my background, I'm a management training consultant. I'm a mental health first aider. I'm a speaker. I'm a wellness coach. I'm an entrepreneur, but I didn't start off that way. So my background is in corporate. I worked for one of the world's largest oil and gas companies as a manager. I worked there for over 15 years, and I only left when I suffered my own mental health issue. I suffered from what now medically would be diagnosed as burnout, but at the time that diagnosis wasn't available. It only came out in, I think, 2019. So I was diagnosed with work-related stress, depression, and anxiety. And what that meant in real terms is that every day I'd wake up disappointed that I hadn't died in my sleep. It meant that I used to think and fantasize about ways that I could kill myself and not make it look like a suicide, so that my family could get insurance money and they'd be better off without me. And it took a lot of time, hard work, and support to get me from that place of absolute depression all brought on by work, to where I am today. And it's in going through that I recognized that this was entirely preventable, that with the right support, with the right services in place, I didn't have to have gone through that kind of pain. And that's why Aurora was born. On a personal note, I'm happily married with 2 young kids who test me on a daily basis. And as I say, I've experienced of personally overcoming the kinds of topics that we'll be talking about today, the anxiety, the depression, the stress, all of that, as well as severe physical health issues. So that's me.
And I'm Obehi Alofoje, and my background is in psychology, so psychologist and stress management coach. I also work with companies and corporate and entrepreneurs as well who want to be able to manage their mental health as well as their productivity. I am Ngozi's cousin, which is why we started this business, because when Ngozi had her mental ill health at the time, I didn't actually know. I saw her often enough, but still didn't spot it. The point is, even when you're equipped and educated to the hilt, you can still miss stuff when people want to hide things from you. So one of the reasons why we do this work is to be able to educate people about what to look out for and how to address it, how to approach it, how to support people to get help much earlier than waiting to the stage where things happen with anxiety. It took longer to get her well, but she is well. But the point is, it didn't have to happen. So my interest is to be able to make sure that people start addressing some of these things much earlier, because before it becomes too late. Okay.
So where we are today, it's no secret that we are in somewhat of a mental health crisis that's been brought on by the pandemic and the unusual situation in which we're all finding ourselves now living and working. So we wanted to have a look at that and address this elephant in the room.
So what's interesting about COVID, prior to COVID, mental health is the thing, no problem there. We knew that 1 in 10 people suffered from mental ill health at some point. Since COVID, it's now 1 in 5. But what we wanted to show you was that COVID itself specifically has some sort of significant impact on the brain and the mind post the illness. So one of the studies that we saw in November of last year, the Lancet Psychiatry Journal, after analyzing a lot of records, we're talking about 69 million people. What we found is that 3 months post-COVID diagnosis, 20% of the people who survived it now had their first ever diagnosis for some sort of anxiety, depression, or insomnia. In other words, they did not have this before. It was not in their history. They might have a propensity to have it, but it was not in evidence until after COVID. This is 2 times more than the average other groups of patients. 2 times more than people with dementia, 2 times. You can imagine, you expect to find that kind of anxiety in any sudden illness with people. But this was not the case. So right now they're still investigating it. We still don't know why. But what we're trying to suggest is it possible that it had a physiological change of the brain? So what that means is, on top of the previous issue, we're going to be more conscious of people who have been diagnosed before with COVID, or they didn't have, they were well within a week, no problem, but they would have had lasting change. And Ngozi and I had COVID at the beginning of when it first hit. And to some degree, Ngozi suffered more with sleep problems than I do, but there's something off going on here. So it's not just me, but of course, 20% of patients. So that we don't know what the full number is going to be later, but we're still checking on it.
And I think the point of this is that this effect of COVID, not just those who have suffered COVID or those who have suffered COVID and then received a diagnosis of some mental ill health condition, but the people who are living and working with them, people close to them, people who've been bereaved by COVID. This effect of COVID has the potential to last much longer than the pandemic. I mean, thank goodness we're at a stage now when there's a rollout for a vaccine and we're hoping to get everybody immunized. I believe there's work on a cure, but we're still going to be living with a hangover from this pandemic for a long time. So this is a phrase that I coined, post-COVID stress disorder, and I coined this after Obehi. As Obehi mentioned, we had COVID back in April, and it's a way of looking at the impact that coronavirus has on an individual, and therefore the impact it will have on them at work. And it's very similar to PTSD. Okay, so my dad is a medical doctor, and we got the opportunity to listen in on a recent BMA conference that they had, where, as Obehi stated, the practitioners there stated that they had seen mental health concerns rise from 1 in 10, so 10% of the population, to now 1 in 5. That's a 100% increase since COVID. And it is clear that some of your workforce are going to be in amongst that population. The stats that we've seen in May from this survey from Hayes show that 25% of the younger demographic in the workplace are reporting positive well-being. That is 75% who are not. And only 37% of managers were reporting positive well-being back in May. Now, I know this was the first lockdown, but this is still applicable now that we're in lockdown 3. 40% claim they didn't have access to a work support network. Whether that's true or not, that's how they felt. And 38% stated that they're more distant with their colleagues since lockdown. So it is impacting the workplace and the workforce without a doubt. And this fall in well-being is happening in organizations that have access to employee assistance programs, to mental health first aiders and things like that. The way we're working is changing. And therefore, the way we respond to supporting our staff has to change as well. What we're talking about is psychological safety, right? So how safe do your employees feel in this new world that they find themselves in this new way of working? That psychological safety will have a significant impact on how they behave at work and in the workplace. It's going to make a difference to their willingness to travel to your office on your workplace, willingness to work on site, their ability to concentrate whilst they're at work, what their personal productivity levels are, and of course on their mental health and well-being. All these things you now have to take into consideration, which before were a given. So Ipsos Mori and King's College in London did some analysis in lockdown 1 of the response of the UK population to not just the pandemic itself, but the government's response to measures, the government's response measures to the pandemic. So lockdown and all the additional police powers that were given, right? And they looked at how people behaved and how they felt about this, and grouped the nation into 3 categories based on the very different ways in which they responded. So the largest group was the accepting. That's made up 40%, 48% of the population, followed by the suffering, which accounted for 44% of the population. And then the smallest group was that of the resisting, which was just 9% of the population. Let's have a look at what those 3 categories mean. So, the accepting, this is the group everybody wants to be in. Only 12% of this group lost sleep about the pandemic and what's going on. Most of them were able to maintain good sleep hygiene. And very few of them had increased problems in the household in terms of arguing with their flatmates or their spouses, or feeling more anxious or depressed. 28% said they were going to face financial difficulties. That's more than a quarter, but it's still the lowest of all the three groups. And they were the least likely to be checking social media obsessively or significantly for coronavirus updates. So they were much more laissez-faire. 91% and 83% were supporting lockdown measures and the police powers respectively, and 87% said they followed the lockdown rules mostly or completely, right? So this is the group that everybody really wants to be in the accepting. Then there's the suffering. Now, this is the group that I flit into most often, I'll admit. 93% of this group reported feeling more anxious and depressed since lockdown. I know for a fact that's me. And I have also been amongst the 64% that have suffered with insomnia or other sleep issues since lockdown began, since this pandemic kicked off. 34% say they think about the virus all the time. It's constantly on their mind. And 64% are checking social media for updates frequently, every day. The highest support for lockdown and additional police powers respectively because of the fear of the virus and everything that it brings. And 93% say they're following those rules absolutely. So these are the people who are very, very worried about this disease and the damage that it can bring. And then there's the resisting. So I've got this image of Donald Trump here. These are COVID deniers, conspiracy theorists. These are people who really struggle with the issue of coronavirus and what it's all about. So only 53 and 49% support the lockdown measures, and 73% are following official guidance, whereas compared with the majority of accepting and suffering. 58% thought that there's too much fuss being made about this risk of coronavirus. So people who are unlikely to wear masks in the supermarket, me as a suffering person, I'm always looking at them thinking they're insane. But the resisting will be the ones who are quite happy to go into the shop and not wear a mask. And you've seen viral videos, I'm sure, of this on Facebook or Instagram. Their high proportions are likely to believe the false claims or conspiracy theories, as I mentioned. And all of this may be linked to the fact that they're the ones most likely to suffer significant personal financial impact because of the crisis, right? So those are the three groups. There is an additional fourth, the embracing group. They're not officially recognized, but these are the introverts who are frankly just loving this situation, loving working from home, loving not having to socialize as much, really embracing time spent at home with their family or on their own. So those people really are quite happy with the situation and have no desire to see the world return to normal.
Yeah,
so
a very small percentage though.
Very small percentage. But we have a question for you. Which group do you belong to? So I believe there's a poll being ready to be launched.
Okay, which group do you belong to right now? Okay, it's okay if you fluctuate from one to the next, but right now, today in January, which group do you belong to?
Okay.
Awesome. Yeah, so 68% accepted.
That's brilliant. So I have another question for you. Do you know which group your staff belong to?
For the most
the majority of us here are in the accepting group, which is great. That's the group you want to be in. Do you know where your staff are? And if You don't. How are you going to find out? Because as we mentioned before, how they respond to the requests for them to return to site, their ability to work, concentrate at work, their productivity, all of this will have a large part to do with which group they're in. Okay. So we all know that well-being and productivity is a balancing act. Employees have to feel safe and supported. They need to feel secure emotionally in order to perform at their best. We all do. But 68% of companies, according to Towers Watson, are stating that employees are reporting higher than normal anxiety levels. So most people are feeling more anxious than they normally would. However, there's more demand on companies now to increase productivity, to recover from the financial impact of coronavirus, and grow revenue, whilst at the same time managing employee well-being. It's a very difficult balancing act, given the uncertainty that we're facing at the moment and the increased workload and work pressure on all of us. So how do we do it? We know fundamentally that employees cannot be productive unless their mental and physical well-being needs are being met. So this is something that we have to, as leaders in an organization, make sure that we're able to meet.
Okay, so we need to think about what can you do about it. So we know that companies must invest. You wouldn't be on this call if you didn't think that it's something that's important to do for your workforce. We have to invest in effective well-being solutions. The time when we just put a little more plaster on it and hope it works and it'll be fine and the GP would take care of it, we now know that that's not necessarily true. We're going to have some sort of solution, an effective one. So we must recognize that mental health and safety is not the sole preserve of HR. It's not solely their responsibility. So people managers will have to get involved. The employees and staff themselves will have to get involved. So we have mental health first aiders and employment assistance programs, EAP alone, and not enough to prevent the rise. We already know it's going up, and even before COVID, that wasn't quite enough. Even more so now. So it's great if the workplace had mental health first aiders and EAP, but you have to bear in mind you have to put a strategy in place to ensure that people are actually using those resources. Employees often do not recognize their issues. That's the big problem here. It's okay to put stuff in place, but if your member of staff or your team doesn't recognize that they have a problem or actually thinks that it'll be gone in a week's time, then you can see where the challenges will come from, because they are reluctant to seek help because they don't know if they can be, they can trust, or they don't feel safe to have those kind of conversations. So awareness training, in our opinion, and in also all the research has said, it is the very first step to take. It's send a message to say, we care about your mental well-being. We care that we want you to be able to succeed. So it's the first step to remove the stigma when it comes to mental health at work. Solutions should definitely empower line managers or people managers, people looking after other people have to be equipped to the hilt, in my opinion. Now, the GP and it cannot cope with this now. So it's going to fall on us managers to be able to support some of the preventative measures. Like I said, you don't want to get to a stage where you have teams who react the way Ngozi did and completely come out from the company. It took a while for that to happen. But at the same time, when you think about revenue and all of that, that would have impacted. So solutions must empower line managers to have open and honest conversation about mental health. It must empower them to identify red flags, the things that will burn out this first few signs, so that they can start acting on it or signpost quickly to those resources that you already have and you already pay for, and to develop preventative strategies, things that will help to start reversing some of the impact of the stress. Okay? So that's what solution will work. Okay, so we're going to get a little bit more interactive now. The four core areas, I'm going to share it with you because you might say, well, Obi and guys, okay, this is great, but where do we start and how do we do what we're doing? I'm going to share it with you. There are four core areas we want you to focus on, okay? All the research suggested, we have done this to the hilt. We've done it for 3 years now. These are the framework that we support organizations with. We're going to share it with you here because you can do this. So we're going to be interactive. I'm going to ask questions. You're going to put them in the chat. So get ready with your keyboards. Okay. The four areas would include, number one, discovery. What this means is having a pulse on your whole organization, critically trying to understand how your employees actually feel about working at your organization, not what you think they feel, actually feel. And to get that, I would like you to score yourself 3 points if you hit all three of these markers, okay? So the first point is that you must have regular quantitative and qualitative surveys. You need both. One gives you snapshot, the other gives you detail. That's one. Two, you have detailed exit and return to work interviews. When people have gone off sick, even for 3 days, and they're back, you still want to know what was underneath that off sick. Was it just a cold or was it something else? The third one is to input into management reviews for action. So once you know what an employee went off sick for, you put some support to that. Score yourself 3, put it in the chat. No judgment here, okay? 3, if you hit all 3 points. 2, if you hit 2 of them. 1, if you hit only 1. And 0, if you don't know what we're talking about here. Okay, let's see the bravest in the chat. Come on, let's see some chat going. And so that's the first core area. The second core area. Moving on. Awareness. Now this part is the popular one. Okay, this part is designed to elicit buy-in from everyone in the organization, from the top to the bottom, by sharing motivated for change. It's a thing that suggests we're all in it together kind of attitude. So 3 points if you score all of these, that you have well-being days or events, just like this one, like this webinar, that will qualify, that you have trained well-being champions or mental health first aiders, and that you have mental health training for the general population of your employees. So you score 3 if you do all 3 of these in some capacity. 2 if you do only 2 of these. 1 if you have 1 of these, and 0 if you do not do any of these at all currently. This is awareness. All right, now moving on. Okay, good. I can see a lot of chat coming through now. Awesome. Okay, now third core area is empower. We love this word, don't we? Empower. Now, what does it actually mean? So, is your mental well-being strategy or your plans empowering or enabling managers to identify, to normalize, and manage mental health issues in the workplace? Can they spot it? And when they do, can they do something about it? And they can do it without the drama. Okay, they can do it without the chaos, without the overwhelm of I don't know what to do. Can you do that? 3 points if you score all 3 of these. 1, that every single team leader has access to some mental health coaching. Okay, not a training where they go off for 2 hours and half a day and come back and it's all cured. No, we're talking about regular coaching where they can go and say, I have someone who is struggling this, but I need to know what to do with them. This is also not the same with line management meeting. Okay, coaching. Second, the team leaders have training. So formalized training on mental well-being, what to look out for, how to have conversations about it, and how to implement actions taken based on what they learned. And 3, do they have external support services like EAP? Even managers also get to use EAP. Do they use it? Do they even know what's in there? Score 3 points if you have this in your management or leadership team. 2, if you have 2 of these. 1, if you have 1 of these. 0, if this is not something you're doing right now. And final, last but not least, it's the governance. It's the thing that rounds it all up. It's the thing that gives evidence to suggest that it's working. It's the thing that allows us to measure and test it. So we need to ensure that employee well-being continues to be a priority long after the pandemic has ended or long after a crisis in the company has ended. What does it mean? Goals are 3 points for all of 3 points. 1, clear well-being policy. Do your staff know where they are? Do you, as a manager, know where they are? Do the HR, do you know where you put it? And do people know where to find it if they needed to access it? 2, do you have an appointed company well-being lead? Someone whose job is it to be able to help create the KPIs? Whose job is it to say whatever tool to put in place is working or not working? 3, the management stewardship. So we're talking about leadership, being able to be involved in the well-being KPI. They actually ask the question in board meetings to say, about that thing that we paid for, has it drawn dividends yet? About that policy we put in place, are people understanding what it means? And this KPI belongs, whose responsibility? That well-being lead, that would be usually their parameter. So these are, if you score 3, put 3 in the chat, 2 of these, 2, 1 point. If you're not doing any of that, 0 point. Now you've seen the framework, so you know you can go back and actually start implementing some of this stuff. Okay?
So,
awesome.
Key takeaways from our session today. I want you to think about these 3 things. I want you to think, first of all, how did I score? On those 4 core areas of an effective well-being strategy, how has your company scored? The maximum score you could have got was 12, the minimum was 0. How did you fare? And in what areas were you scoring well? In which areas do you need to do a lot more thinking?
Yeah.
I want you to think about the one key thing that you've learned from today. Is it something that you're missing? Is it something that you're doing well? What is it? What's the key thing that you've learned from today? And finally, what one personal action are you committing to doing? And it doesn't have to be a major thing. It could be, I'm committing to going back and examining these 4 core areas and figuring out how we're going to start improving our school. I'm committing to finding out actually whether or not our employees are using the EAP that we have. But I'd like you each to commit one personal action to improving your overall employee well-being. And there's a good reason for it. So good mental health is good business. It's not just nice business. It's not just moral business. It is good business. For every pound that is invested in mental health support in an organization, Deloitte, in a January 2020 study, found that companies will receive a return on investment of 5 for every £1 spent. And that is because they will see reduced presenteeism, reduced absenteeism, reduced sickness pay, increased productivity, etc., etc., etc. So it pays to invest in your employees' mental health and well-being. There is evidence to support it. If anybody wants to know where that Deloitte report is, just ask in the chat. We can, I'm sure, send you a link to it. But it is good business. It is sound business sense to make sure that your employees are not just physically safe, but are also mentally healthy. Thank you. So now we have the opportunity to ask questions.
Ladies, that was excellent. Thank you. And it does just make me stop and think that we've done quite a lot at Page in regards to supporting the well-being of our employees. And yet there's always so much more you can do. It's not just about visibility, is it? It's not just about saying, it's okay, we understand mental health is a real thing and we've got an EAP. It's how do you actually interweave it throughout all areas of your organization? You know, empower, as you said quite rightly, you know, everybody to be confident in sometimes as simple as having the conversation, because sometimes people are so scared of it that they say nothing at all, and
Yes.
that, you know, that doesn't help anybody, does it? But it is about how you improve people's understanding so that they then can go into a conversation and be prepared to hear what comes back and know then what you do about it. We've had so many questions come in, so I'm just going to get started, if
Good.
that's okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
So here we go. There was somebody who just shared their own experience, which I'll read. I suffered similar experience. I could faint just at the entrance of the office. I had awful panic attacks. I was bullied by my manager, who knew my triggers. I've not received any support from the workplace, and as a single mum, I've had to keep my smile and at the same time suffered a lot, but managed to put my head above water. COVID situation is very difficult, but I am strong and can support others. I mean, wow. I don't suppose there are. Yeah, that sounds quite remarkable. I suspect there's not so many people who've been able to keep their head above water. So whoever sent that in, thank you, and keep going.
Yes, thank you.
I'm sure there are other areas of support you can tap into, even if your work isn't going to support you. Don't know if you have any further thoughts on that, ladies.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, go on, Ngozi, go on.
Yeah, one thing I'd say is thank you for sharing that. It's really, really difficult. We often think that, well, we just keep going and put a brave face on it. I would say don't do it alone. That's why we say you don't have to fight your demons. Look, please don't try, and just power your way through it, because what you are going through is, it can be absolutely devastating. I know from personal experience. So do reach out to your GP for support. We will be sending I think the slides of this, and at the back there's some links to NHS guidelines that can support you. But please don't try and just brave your way through it like I did. I tried to power my way through depression and burnout and stress and all of that. It didn't work. It didn't work. It doesn't work. You do need help, and you deserve help. Obehi?
Thank you for saying that. You can't power your way through it. I did not. You don't have to. That's the thing I would like to say. You don't have to. And if work is not supported in terms of a manager, see if they have other things like the EAP stuff, because the manager may not know, but it's there. So access those things, see your DP, and have a conversation with your DP. Don't gloss over it, because that way you get targeted support early that will actually help you, because it's very clear if you're putting your head above water. And this is for everybody who's on this call right now. If you're a manager or someone, we have someone who is trying to put head above water. She's not going to be as productive. That's the bottom line. They're going to power through because a lot of energy wasted. That person, you can't produce the goods. So how many of your other staff are doing this, are wading through it, but putting a smile on, looking like, oh no, they're all right? Which is why we asked that question. How is your staff feeling? That's fine, you're fine, but are they? And can you tell? And are you asking questions enough to know? Yeah.
You've got to figure out a way of keeping it sustainable, haven't you? It's not enough just to kind of get by. You've got to think about, can I do this for the long haul? Because we've still got a way to go with this, haven't we? Somebody's also commented that actually they think mental health actually could be affecting more than 1 in 4. So numbers are never going to be less than what we've talked about, are they? No. They're only going to be more.
No.
How can we support people who are shielding alone with medical conditions that they do not want to talk about?
This is hard. Okay, so if you're still going to learn, we already know that we're wired to connect with people. So this lockdown, one of the added pressure is not being able to have people that we're close to, or families and all of that stuff. It is not easy. But what I would be saying is, if you can, depend on the medical condition as well, of course, but you will need to be able to get out in some way. Go for walks, obviously by yourself, but you do need to be able to go out to get the exercise in. I don't like exercise either, but I've got to do it because it helps to boost the natural body's antidepressant. So you need to do those things. You need to actually connect with people, even on Zoom. I know we're zoomed out, but you can get on the phone with people. Phones still work, people. You can ring and, like you don't need to have a video, because that can take a lot of energy as well. One of the things I like to do is just go out for a walk and have a friend on my phone, and we just do the walk. So you're going to have to make those kind of decisions. It won't be like before. you're gonna resent doing not being able to do the things you did before. But look at what you're gonna have to do to keep yourself well. So if you're sugar alone, isolation is going to be a huge issue. You will have to make support to be able to connect with people, not just have chat, but really connect deeply with people. You can do several of these, have different groups of people that you talk to or connect with, and just let that run. If you have people with even similar medical conditions, there'll be support groups for that. So you can create something. If you can't find your own, create your own, put it out there, saying, I've got this thing, who wants to join me? But some of this stuff is going to be self-motivating. You're going to have to start the ball rolling yourself. But ask for
Great.
support where possible. Yeah, that's what I would say to that.
Super. And what about the inevitable challenge of working parents who've got their kids at home
Ngozi,
as
take
well?
this
I
one.
mean, yeah. Come on, Ngozi, step up. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, the key thing is recognizing that this situation that we're in is unique. But what I love about it is that everybody is in the same situation. It is not just my kids off school because they're sick. It is everybody's kids are at home. So as a leader, as a manager in an organization, having that level of understanding and showing, and this is true for almost everything, showing by example that it is okay. It is okay now for us to have a personal life that tips into our work life. Not only is it okay, it's essential. We are working from our homes. We can see what Sheri's home looks like. You can see what my home looks like. You can see, although I did warn her not to come down, my kid walked past to go and get something from the fridge. I told her she wasn't allowed to come down during this session, Sheri. But you can see that everybody has a life. As a leader, show that that's okay. So let your employees feel comfortable with it. Allow some time for your employees to be with their families. So that means allowing for agile, flexible working. We know that if you've got a workforce that you trust, that have been doing a good job for you in the past, there's no reason why it's not going to continue. But they may have to stop because they're homeschooling and they need to answer a question. So they might be working longer in the evenings. Allow for that. Do not put any pressure on employees who are already facing a tremendous burden. And if you are the working parent, it is okay that you're doing a slightly rubbish job at everything. You will feel like you're doing a slightly rubbish job with everything. You're a slightly rubbish mum. You're a slightly rubbish employer. You're a slightly rubbish dad or teacher or whatever. That's okay, because you're not supposed to be doing all things well all the time. And that is what you're challenged to do right now. It's okay. You cannot be excellent at everything all the time. So don't try.
You gave me a brilliant phrase
as much as possible.
in lockdown 1, Ngozi. You said you can't work like you don't have kids, and you can't parent like you don't work. And I think it's very true to say that no one's chosen this. You know, if you are a working parent, then you do that because your kids are in childcare in some way, shape, or form. You know, if we were all destined to be teachers, we would be teachers. So, you know, please just be kind to yourself. And we did a parent session at Page last week, and one thing that came out of it is when you're with your kids, do something you all enjoy. Don't make it all about homeschooling all the time, because you know, I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm not finding that very easy. So, you know, actually making sure you do have a bit of fun and so on. Just as questions are flooding in, we're going to have to move a little bit quicker. Just the whole 68% accepting. The comment here is, I wonder how many of those people are actually in work, and I wonder if that would perhaps influence responses for people. That's more of a statement than anything else. Then there were the scores. What do wellbeing KPIs look like?
Oh, yes, that's an interesting one. Yeah, well, so when I think about KPIs, we think about how whatever policy you put in place, well-being stuff you put in place, is it showing dividends? So are you able to measure whether your social inclusion, so are people engaging in meetings when you ask them to? Are they having conversations about their attitude, their feelings? So are you monitoring team briefings where someone said, oh yeah, we're talking about our feelings, you know, how things are today, how we are every week? And are people engaging in that? Are they interacting in that? Are they reporting feeling happier right? Are they feeling that they feel connected to the organization? Do they feel that they're participating in whatever event that you've created for them? Is there more positive vibe? Do they feel like the company is making an effort? So these are kind of things that you could measure. Even physical activity. I've had organizations that we work with where in the middle of the meeting they'll go for a walk together. What does that mean? It just means get off Zoom. You can plug on the phone audio and then you just walk. But why do they do that? Is so people can move, so they get that physical activity as well. And because when people are not face to screen, they can probably say what they need to share. Okay, so they're the kind of thing. And also, if you have EAP, being able to draw those stats out. How many people are actually using EAP? And is there an influx in numbers based on how you promoted EAP? If you promote EAP 1 month, did the number go up? That suggests that people want to use it. They just forget that it's there, or they feel guilty about using it. So you decide with your leadership what KPI you will measure, but all you want to know is the thing that we're doing over here, the wellbeing training and the leadership training and the awareness day, does it show dividends somewhere in reality? How do you measure that 12 months, 3 months, 6 months down the line? These are the things. You can put whatever you want, and if you need help around that, you can feel free to come and ask us. But I'm going to let another question go through. Yeah, I hope that answered that question.
Thank you. Do you think there is still stigma around mental health absences? Have you found managers are more sympathetic to an absence for a physical reason, or has this changed now?
No, it's still the same. There's still stigma.
It's still the same.
There is still stigma. We all know it. There is concern about how you're perceived as, being crazy, the crazy label. And you can say you're going off work for 3 months because you've broken your arm, and nobody expects that to be a long-term hangover thing. You can't say that you're going off work for 3 months because you're depressed and expect that people will come back and not treat you differently. That is the stigma.
Yeah.
It's subtle, it's pervasive, and it exists. Yeah.
To the question, have you found
there's
managers
all step behavioural changes, isn't it?
Yeah.
Have you got links
why
to
training
team
your managers is important.
Yeah.
Have you got links to team leadership coaching?
Links to team leadership coaching?
Yeah.
Well, we offer team leadership coaching. Is that
there
what
you
they
go.
mean?
They're right here.
You can contact us.
There you go. Perfect. With staff working from home, do you have any suggestions how to assess if they are struggling? They might be keeping their cameras off. They might not be letting you in. Yeah. What can we do?
Oh, Sheri, well done with that. Is they all of a sudden getting their cameras off? Right, because right now can't tell, but I got booties on, like dress with booties. That's okay.
Got that Zoom look.
Right? We're working from home. That's okay. But what it is you're gonna ask questions. Anybody can pretend to be okay. That's the point of it, right? But so you're not gonna rely on what they're showing me. They look okay. Okay, but did you check? How do you know? It's by having conversation and regularly. My recommendation: if you have weekly team meetings or weekly or morning briefing, whatever you have, make sure a chunk of it is spent talking about how people have been that week. Like, spend the chunk. Don't let them just do this thing. Oh, it's fine. It's all right. I went for a walk and then end the story. You need to allow a chunk. Okay, why? Because the feelings come out in a chunk. They come out when people feel it feels safe to do so. And if you're a leader, I would double dare you to be the one who called it first. Who says, I had a shit week this week. I struggled. I had an argument with my wife about this silly thing. I feel awful about it. Let it come out. Because then what it tells them is, I can share my stuff. It's in the sharing. So don't forget, you're not expecting you to be mental health practitioners and mental health psychologists. We're not expecting you to do that. What we are expecting you to do is being able to call and say, this person is struggling more than most. This person is struggling more than usual, to say, hey, that conversation we had, can we have it again later? Because I am concerned about you. That's the 3rd time in a row that you presented quite low. What are you doing about it?
And I read somewhere about asking twice, rather than just saying, how are you?
Oh, ask them along.
Saying, no, how are you really? And push it a bit further.
Yeah.
From February, once our training is complete, my colleague and I will be the first mental health first aiders in our business, almost 100 employees. We're really, well done. We're really keen to launch this out to the business and help them understand how we can make a difference. Do you offer any advice on actual positioning of this within the business and how we begin to positively communicate with employees, given we are all remote working?
Yes. Okay. First of all, well done for doing it. 'Cause no, it's no easy feat, that training. And one of the things that I would just say, you say that how many of you, just you, or how many of you did the
Two.
training?
There's
So two, I think, yeah,
2
100
people. Okay.
employees, yeah.
I would ideally love more, but there are 2 of you, and that's fine. What I would say, you do need a strategy though. Okay, you've done the qualification, but it doesn't make you a therapist all of a sudden. I know you know that was part of the training, but I do want you to be able to pace yourself with it. So to advertise, just make sure you have a strategy. You and the other person, you are now a small team. You have to agree, what is it that we're prepared to support with? How often are we supposed to support? Do we have clinics on Friday afternoon where we say, come and talk to us? Are we organizing a sort of well-being circle every Wednesday to get people to come and talk? You know, what are we doing? Decide that and make it the strategy so that you don't burn out yourself. I'm a huge fan of mental health first aiders, but I'm also one of the biggest critics as well, because I think it should come with some sort of clinical supervision that allows you to also process your own emotional stuff when people have dumped theirs on you, because you are not a qualified therapist. So I would say, well done. I could get a strategy. You and this other person, you are tag team is what you are. And you need to be able to allow part of your workflow. So in other words, you cannot do your full-time job plus this. That's just extra work. So make sure that your leadership are fine, that you will allocate some of your work to this. This is work for you.
Yeah.
This is not the extra
Part
stuff.
day job. Yeah.
Okay. And
Yeah.
then I would say, if you need to reach out to us, we can help you structure some of this stuff, because I still believe that we need clinical supervision so that you have somewhere to offload when someone has said, I'm feeling a bit suicidal, I'm feeling a bit depressed, for you not to take it home to your own spouse at home.
Yeah.
Because that's naturally what will happen. If we're human beings, we will always absorb. And the fact that you put your hand up to do it already tells me what kind of person you are. Someone who cares, and you will absorb
Yeah.
other people's stuff. So you need
What's
to be
your
very
phrase, Ngozi, here? Can't pour from an empty cup, can you? Isn't that
We cannot.
your phrase here?
Yes.
No,
We've got to preserve ourselves. You know, we can all help each
definitely.
other, but we do have to remember keep ourselves in check as well, because all of the resources that are available to us too, in leadership roles and whatever.
Yeah.
I work across EMEA. Do these strategies work across cultures?
Ooh, brilliant question.
That's a good one. Yes, I think it is different.
Yep.
It's different in different cultures. So we are African. We come from the kind of culture where if you come from an African family, you don't talk about mental health. It is not something that we typically talk about because there's real problems, right? So talking about your feelings and that's a problem for other people. That for us, let's just you're fine, and you always look for the glass half full and all of this stuff. So yes, it's even though it's a human condition, even though the solutions are always the same, there are challenges with this across different cultures. So you'll find resistance to those methods increase in certain communities, but that doesn't change the strategy or approach. And fundamentally, I've seen some more questions coming in. The fundamental thing about all of this is trust. Do your employees trust you? Have you built up enough trust that they feel it is safe, that's psychological safety again, for them to come and tell you their problems, and that they will receive the correct help and not be penalized for it?
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, there must be another 20 questions here, ladies. We just are simply not going to have time. So in the interest of everybody's well-being, I'm going to make sure we finish with a few minutes so everyone can go and have a breather before their 11 o'clock call. But what I am going to say is we will complete all of these questions for you. Ngozi and Obehi have said that they will do that. So I'm sorry for all of those questions we haven't been able to get to. We have been overwhelmed, but we will answer them and we will get the answers back to you. Of course, you can make direct contact with these ladies too if you feel there's more they can support you and your organisations with. So please don't hesitate to do that. I think this has just proven that this is just the tip of the iceberg. There is so much here, and it does play out in so many different ways, and everybody is human, and therefore, you know, as we know, mental health doesn't discriminate. So it doesn't matter what level you are. It doesn't matter if the person next to you suffers. It's not a kind of rule of two. There is if they are, I won't. You know, there's none of that. It really could be any one of us at any time. So please do be kind to yourselves. Be kind to one another. Please do feel free to get in touch with Ngozi Obehi for further support. And I can only thank you all so much for joining us and sharing these questions, which I promise we will come back to. Ngozi Obehi, as ever, it's just a delight to work with you. Thank you so much for your pearls of wisdom.
You,
and I wish everybody a very, very happy Wednesday. Take care.
Can
Bye.
I just ask everybody to contact me on LinkedIn? They can find Ngozi Weller. They can find Obehi Alofoje. And if you do have questions you'd like us to answer, please contact us through LinkedIn. We'll be happy to help.
Yeah. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks so much.
You, Sheri.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
If you found this video helpful for your recruitment journey, why not subscribe to our channel? And don't forget to tap the bell to get the latest videos first.